koutou. Hello, I'm Nicholas from Meridian Energy in New Zealand. We're at the other side of the earth, so this is really interesting when you are trying to electrify a fleet away from all these other markets. We are going to talk today about the motivations and barriers to running a large fleet, and we've been doing this now for about 3 years, an amazing journey. We're lucky that, like Norway, we have a high degree of renewable energy, about 85%, all produced through hydro, geothermal, and wind. So we have a wonderful basis to say, well, electric vehicles make sense because they're powered by really good energy. And our government has a target of becoming 100% renewable energy by 2035. I think we'll look to easily overcome that in New Zealand, which is really good news. And we ultimately want to become a zero carbon economy by 2050, so very consistent with global standards. Again, something that we learned from earlier today, I think we need to get a lot earlier. The biggest opportunity for this is certainly transport for New Zealand is only about 20% of our emissions profile, so agriculture is huge in New Zealand, so it's an important piece. Agriculture is a huge area that we need to work on, but transport, which we're going to talk about today, is about 20%. As I say, we're at the end of the earth, so that involves you having to do more with less, and I'll talk about that some more just now. For Meridian, to say we do 100% renewable energy as a company, we're very proud to have sustainability at our core. And with what we've been doing and going around talking to other businesses in New Zealand, is talking, well, we want to have good social sustainability and environmental sustainability. What I've been trying to do as a procurement manager is unlock a model that is financially sustainable, which is hugely challenging. We have been one of the top 10 brands, sustainable brands in New Zealand for the last 10 years, and it's just something that we will be looking to drive. That's about enough of us. These are some of our assets you can see up there, some of our wind sites, which are world-class hydro and wind generation, really cool stuff. A pretty boring graph behind me, so I won't touch that just at the moment, but New Zealand had 210 electric vehicles 5 years ago on our roads. Today we have 13,000, so we've gone from 200 to 13,000 in 5 years, so that's very, very good growth. From there, we've got the early adopters kind of on board, but it's still very small by numbers. Only about 1% of new vehicles are purchased that are electric, and about 2.5% of used vehicles are electric. So we have a long way to go to become where other countries are, like Norway. And our average age, as you'll see behind there, is a really interesting factor because New Zealanders don't buy a lot of new vehicles, certainly not privately, fleets do. And so we have a very old fleet by nature. That makes it very challenging when most people buy a car that's worth 5,000 to 8,000 euros, and even if you're buying a used EV, that makes the financial barrier very considerable. So that's some of the backyard, I guess, in context. The other thing is those 3 pictures you see on your right. One of those vehicles is, a typical kind of Nissan affordable vehicle out of Japan, costs maybe 8,000 euros. That's what you're up against, and you're trying to help people electrify their fleets at home. And of course, the electric vehicle is significantly more expensive. We love to tow vehicles, we love to go on holiday, tow stuff around, buy SUVs. And our biggest selling segment is, Toyota Hilux style utilities. That's urban people. So the biggest segment sold in New Zealand is urban people driving around in utes in town that don't actually go four-wheel driving. They just like to be seen at a four-wheel drive. And so you suddenly realise that with electric vehicles in New Zealand, form is more important than function, and how the vehicle presents its identity and who you are is actually really, really strong, and a reason why electrification has been quite challenging so far. So that's the context for New Zealand. These are the 5 areas that I was going to touch on around what motivates us and what are barriers, and all of the first 4 are pretty interconnected, as you can expect. Our isolation makes it really challenging. We're next to Australia. Australia has large distances. All of its energy is basically on coal and gas, so they're not that interested in electric vehicles. They don't fit the requirement, and all of New Zealand's vehicles that come in new are sourced through Australia as a purchasing channel. So they don't buy vehicles, electric vehicles, we don't get them. So it makes it very, very challenging when you're at the other end of the earth and you're trying to electrify a large fleet. So we've had to use some really interesting ways of getting vehicles here to New Zealand. Supply is a really interesting part, as is the product and the same form over function. So Kiwis want a certain type of product, and at the moment there's not a huge range for us in New Zealand, so they become very much barriers. Obviously the cool things that motivate us are we have a great renewables platform, we have a very tourism-led export sector, and so our reputation is very important. So you can see there's motivators and barriers here that are really challenging. And of course price. So what's interesting in New Zealand too is that all of our renewable energy is not subsidised. We're the only country in the world that's built wind turbines and energy, and they're done with not a single subsidy. They stack up commercially, and that's the same for our vehicle industry. So we have no subsidies, no fee baits, nothing that's going to incentivise electric vehicles from our government at this point. So you, as a large fleet operator, very challenging to make that financial proposition stack up. So these are the challenges we have. At the same time, we've got some really, really good results, and I guess I'll quickly touch and say, as a large fleet operator, I'll touch on the next slide, we've managed to get to our electric vehicle targets still without spending any more than I would have usually on our comparative internal combustion engine vehicles. So we have got to, in this case, more than half our passenger fleet is electric, and that's 100% electric. There's no PHEVs or hybrids. We've done so both financially, sustainably. So that's a really, really cool thing. That's what we've been going around New Zealand and helping other large fleets talk about. It's a separate presentation really, which I won't have some time to get into today, but we're looking to get to 90% pretty soon. And the other challenging part is all of my light commercial fleet, which are utes and vans, which of course there's very limited product right now. So that's my next challenge. I've got about 20% of that fleet electrified, but we're going to need some other product to come in. So we've got some very ambitious goals. We will be 100% across our whole fleet by, I think we've committed 2025. I think that's very ambitious, but I think it's possible, and I set the target, and the board said yes, so I'm on the hook for it now. And through there, this is our journey from the start, and it ultimately just started looking at a spreadsheet with the data. Off the back of a disaster, actually. It was the Christchurch earthquakes. We had some earthquakes in the city called Christchurch, devastated the CBD. Someone came up with a great idea, said, why do we all have our own fleets? Why don't we share these fleets, and why don't we make them electric? So I delved into the data, and what I didn't realise at that point was actually this profile was perfect for electrifying a large fleet. Handed it to an analyst, and 2 days later we had our strategy. 90 days later we had our first electric vehicles, and so we've got to 75% by July this year as a fully electrified passenger fleet. So it's been a very quick journey, but a very exciting journey to get there. And as I say, we've even started looking at the end there, you'll see an LDV ute from China. We've even started trying to convert a few vehicles and say, what does this look like out in the middle of nowhere where it's freezing cold up onto the mountains? So we're really trying to push the envelope around electrifying large fleets and then share that journey throughout New Zealand. Sorry, no questions at this point, is it? But thank you very much for your time today. Lovely to be here.